Well, hello everyone and welcome to this week's Discussions with Dolf. And from the background behind me, you can see that we're not on one of our standard locations. We are in fact on the island of Malta. Malta is this tiny island in the middle of the Mediterranean. It's sort of halfway between Sicily at the bottom of Italy and Tunisia. And it's a tiny place. It's only 13 miles by 19 miles, which is about 19 kilometers by 30 kilometers. Yet it has its own language, and before joining the EU it had its own currency and it's got its own history. In fact, it's got some of the oldest history on record. Indeed, the oldest artifacts known to mankind come from the island of Malta. And apparently Malta was discovered when the Apostle Paul was sailing back to the Vatican City from North Africa, and he got shipwrecked here, and he thought it was so beautiful that he invited all the artisans of Europe to come and put on their best samples of work. And the little capital city just over here, Valletta, is in fact the only city that I'm aware of that has been made in its entirety a World Heritage Park, which is quite an interesting thing. But from a real estate perspective, it really brings out something very interesting. Apart from the beautiful churches here, I mean, when you see this church, there are actually 365 churches or cathedrals on the island of Malta. That's one for every day of the year. It's a very Catholic country as far as I understand. It's got the highest proportion of Catholics of any country anywhere in the world. Very interesting. But I mentioned before that when they joined the EU, they adopted the euro as their currency. Well, from a real estate perspective, and I know the greatest test of willpower is to refrain from saying, I told you so, but I'm going to indulge myself, something I don't always do, because as it was apparent that Malta was going to be admitted as a member of the EU, I predicted that real estate values would go up, and indeed they did. I predicted they would double, and I was flat wrong, because in an 18-month period, on most of the island, they trebled. And these things are predictable. And some of you will remember that I've often spoken about what happens if you can get what's called a zone change. If you've got a street that is zoned residential and you know of a zone change coming through that might make it light industrial, even commercial or something like that, the value of the properties often goes up, because instead of just renting it out as a house for people to live in, there's now a possibility that it can be rented out to small commercial premises, which usually is more lucrative. The returns can be better. Well, when an island joins a group of economic member nations like Closer Economic Relations, CER, or NAFTA, or the European Union as it was originally known, the EEC, the European Economic Community, then things happen. Just like we've just seen the exit of Britain from the EU, it's called Brexit, and that's had a devastating effect on share markets there, and even property prices in London in the last month have declined 2.3% in 1 month. That's significant. So it is that when you join a group like the EU, values go up. These things are predictable, and that's one of the things I love about real estate. It's relatively slow to move, and the changes are predictable. So I would keep an eye, and in fact I do, on which nations are joining certain economic bodies and which are leaving, and you can make investment decisions based on that. And if you follow me around here, I think you'll see that apart from stunning views here, and of course it's an island, it's a tiny island, so it's very difficult to get very far from the ocean. But when you do, you will see that across the way there we've got this massive cathedral, and it's got one of the largest domes in the world. In fact, the second largest cathedral dome in the world after St. Peter's Basilica in Rome is in fact here in Malta. It's not that one, it's in a place called Mostar. Very interesting. But that's the little capital city of Valletta. It's on a peninsula that is fortified, and it's got these very high limestone walls to keep invaders out. And invaders there were aplenty. People have come from the Byzantine era and the Ottoman Empire and the Arabs and the French and the British. They've all invaded and occupied at various stages, which is why their language is so rich with many aspects and nuances from all these cultures. And indeed, the whole history has aspects of all these cultures there. It is a place well worth visiting, and from an investment point of view, it's something that shouldn't necessarily be off your bucket list. Anyway, that's all we have time for this week. And as usual, until next time, I wish you successful investing. Thank you very much.